we now want to think about what we call direct government intervention on pricing, direct price controls. And in particular, we're thinking about something here called a price floor. Price floor, just as it sounds, is a price that the government will not let, there's a level that the government won't let price fall below it. That's the floor for this particular market. So let's think how something like that might work. In order to do it, we'll draw a demand and supply curve. We put price on the horizontal axis, put quantity on the vertical axis, and we have a demand curve, we'll call it D0, and we have a supply curve, we'll call that S0. And again, I know that you've heard me say this before, but I want to make sure you understand that, you know, I don't know exactly what the position of these are, but right now, for our intuition, I just know the demand curve is downward sloping. I know supply curve is upward sloping. And sort of, I've got the pen and I put them in this position, and we're going to discover different things about how the shapes may vary systematically. We'll look at that later, but right now we'll start with this. And we know from what we've already established that this price, P0 and Q0, P0 and Q0 would be what we might call the free market equilibrium. There's no tendency for change here. It's where the market would go absent any government intervention. Now, suppose the government announces a price floor. The government says price can never fall below this particular line. Price has to be equal to this or greater than that. And so for us, we'll call this the P sub floor. And at that floor price, we know that firms really want to put out some amount here that we'll call X, and consumers only want to buy this amount, which we'll call Y. This gap is called a surplus. Now, we've established before that a surplus is an out of equilibrium situation. It's out of equilibrium in the sense that the market would drive the price down because lowering price would put consumers to want to purchase more. At the same time, firms would want to supply less, and we get rid of that surplus. But in this case, it can't happen. The government doesn't allow the price to go below that. And so how does this possibly work? Well, that's not the easiest thing in the world. They can't just call that out. Let's think for this example. We look at the U.S. dairy industry, fluid milk. Up until 2014, this industry had a price floor. The government announced a price that at the dairy barn level, the price for milk could never fall below that level. Now, given that, if this was the supply of milk producers, the dairy industry farmers, given that, they're going to want to go clear out the air. They're going to make a lot of milk. The government says, well, we can't go below that, and at that price, people only want to buy Y. How do we solve this problem? There's a lot of extra milk out there. Who's going to buy that? At that price quoted of price of floor, there's no buyers. That's the whole purpose of this. Well, it turns out the only way the government could make this happen is the government has to be the buyer. So the government would wade in and say, we're going to guarantee the price can't go lower than that. And the way this happens is that we will, in fact, purchase this amount. We'll call this Q sub S. Consumers only want to buy Q sub D. And so this gap, QS greater than QD, is the amount the government wished to purchase. The government becomes the purchaser of last resort. They can hold that price up by making sure that all the milk that's being produced by the farmers, which is clear out here to X, they'll buy this amount that the consumers don't want to. So how much is the government paying for that? Well, we can see that by just thinking about the government is going to buy Q0, QS to QD units, and they're going to pay this amount. So if you think about it, the area of a rectangle is just base times height. This entire shaded area would be the dollar value of the government purchases. They would need to do this in order to keep the price supported above the equilibrium price. What do they do with that milk? Well, it turns out that you can turn milk like that into cheese, and the government has needs for government cheese operations. They have at any given weekend in any given community. It might at the National Guard Armory, they might be giving away cheese, and local religious organizations, they might be giving away cheese. This is all government cheese that's produced because of this program that requires them to buy the surplus milk produced because the price was put up by the government higher than the market clearing price, and it's just not going to work. Okay, there's just too much going out there. So as you can see, this is going to be an expensive program, and it's important you ask yourself the question, why? Why does the government do this? Why would they enter this market? I mean, you don't see them putting price floors on other products like automobiles or cell phones or jeans, whatever product you can think of. Why did the government decide to do this? Well, the rationale by the government for this is that this is a special type of product. It's a product that milk is essentially important for us. Lots of times there are lots of children who, for various reasons, have to have milk when they're infants. Okay? And we need to have a steady access to milk. And the government was worried that without these types of floors, prices could get into a cycle where the prices got so low that farmers would actually just want out of the business and they'd sell off their herd stock of milk cows. And when that happens, of course, there's not a lot there for milk and price could swing very high. And that might get so high that some mothers, new mothers, might not be able to afford milk. We could be in a shortage, a situation where we just don't have enough that people could afford. So if you think of this as some sort of a necessary product, it's something that the government has deemed requires protection, the government put these price floors in to bring stability to the market. So you wouldn't have these price fall and rise cycle, which would cause some people to exit and cause the price to jump back up. If they put that price floor on there, they can pretty much have a year in, year out steady price.